opinion, yeah.
So Germans are more respectful abroad than English.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I
So
honestly
they're quiet
wouldn't
to
say.
do that thing. I mean,
Yeah, honestly, I think that
Yeah.
the German people abroad are more respectful. Also because
let's say somebody on £20,000 a year, there's a lot of complaints to say that, I can barely live my life like that. In my opinion, they're not being frugal enough with their money. But I think if you earn £20,000 a year, maybe you can't live in the city centre, but maybe you can't afford to drive a car.
Okay, welcome to Real Talk. I'm Richard Williams and I'm here with Gabrielle. The purpose of the show is to make sure that everybody from different backgrounds has an opportunity to have a view on these slightly controversial topics. Today, we're going with the topic, are English people spoiled? I myself am somebody who's grown up in England. I'm half English and half Filipino. So I'm going to be sort of talking, I guess, from my perspective on that side of things. And then Gabrielle, what's your background?
I come from Italy. I've been living in France too, but and it was great, honestly. But I think that here there are better way to organize job.
English people abroad.
Oh,
So obviously people in England have a reputation when they're abroad.
well,
I'll let you actually. What do you think the English reputation is abroad?
honestly, I met massively English people abroad in Italy, both France and in Spain, and I can tell you the three big difference, and it's the way English people perceive our countries. Just to be frank about that, English people tend to see countries and to identify countries with a certain kind of lifestyle, ignoring story or culture of it. So at a certain point, it's like an object, a reflection of the wishes of people. For example, Spain is not the fantastic country that conquered the world, that created a lot of culture. Spain, in this moment of the history of the world, is a cheap country where you can spend a lot of money and have a lot of fun on the beaches, even if it's more.
A lot of cheap alcohol.
Exactly, a lot of cheap alcohol. While if you go in French Riviera, ignoring always France at all, you just behave nicely. When you go to Italy, even if Italy is mostly surrounded by sea, you don't think of Italy about the sea, you think about Italy for fashion, for history, which is good. So it's like categorizing this. And
So
with this
stereotype. But you say we kind of stereotype countries very heavily compared to potentially other countries.
Absolutely.
So when we go to that country or that area, we use, I guess, the stereotype and just go crazy on it. So if we go to like a cheap beach resort, we fully utilise that and go heavy on the drinks and the culture, the clubbing, the partying, and potentially the bad side of things. And that's, in my mind, what English are famous for abroad. However, there's always a bit of a flip side to that, where if you go to a very nice or more upmarket place, and our English people there, they will again utilise the history. Like in France, the Riviera is known to be a nice and posh place.
Exactly.
So the English people who are going there will exemplify the behaviour that's associated with the French Riviera, which isn't necessarily being sort of loud and obnoxious. I guess maybe being a young person from England, I've mainly seen English people abroad in the more party resorts. So when I go to Ibiza or Albufeira or Benidorm or Magaluf, these sort of places where the culture tends to be a lot more going crazy on.
Yeah.
So let's say 5-10 years ago, I don't know if you had a certain perception of what it was like to be an English person, and then when you came here, if it was any different or if it was the same.
Oh no! The thing I was speaking before is the stereotype thing of the English people abroad that just go crazy, party all the time. They use it like a kind of relaxed partying holidays. But no, the thing that mostly changed it for me is like the way people hear things to be that different from the rest of Europe. While it's not, and it's not something bad. It's like. For example, when I go to Spain, I don't feel like I'm going in another part of the world or in a place where I should behave differently. I just behave the same. I think I belong to that place as much as I belong to my place. And that's all I used to do everywhere. While in other places, maybe if I go a bit further, I might feel like I have to be careful for what to say, or like I should do differently because I'm allowed to do it. Which is
I think, I don't know if this is just a me problem, but when I go abroad, I do think I can kind of do what I want to do in terms of, I try to be respectful, but like, you know, if I'm having a drink on the street, like walking down the street with a bottle of beer, I don't really see a problem with that as long as I'm being respectful and I'm not like shouting at people. Whereas, you know, a lot of people might see that as being quite bad.
Most of the countries in Southern Europe, for example, it's it's still forbidden to go out and drink all the time, just because it's like we have a very, very limited culture with alcohol compared to here.
So I think I always feel like I get a free pass because, like, if I'm respectful to do it, then I'm allowed. But obviously, that's realistically speaking, that's not how I should probably behave abroad. And I guess even when I go, it might just be the culture of hot countries. Like you go to Thailand or Spain, where you just walk around topless and such. I've been told off many Italians in Ibiza for walk around topless just in cafes and restaurants and bars. And I would never do that in England. I would never walk into a bar or restaurant in England topless, but then I'm abroad and I'm like, I just behave differently because I've got like different mentality in my head.
Different kind of culture, maybe also the law. I mean, it's forbidden.
I mean, then again, it's like, am I going to get arrested?
I thought it was forbidden here too before I saw people going.
And that's it. I think everybody breaks the rules in England. So when, like, that was so obvious in COVID, I feel like everybody in England, especially in the north or Manchester where I was living, like, everybody was breaking the rules. So then when we go to another country, of course, not only going to bring our culture of what we want to do, but like if we're breaking the rules here, we're probably going to break the rules a little bit in other countries. I think the last thing I want to just bring up on, so if you had to compare, for example, the culture of English people to other tourists, let's say Americans, Australians, Germans, do you see any real differences, or are they all kind of the same?
Well, you mentioned all German-based culture, so the stays in places that are a lot of different from the Latin areas, for example. But I don't think that I don't ever notice the difference between Australian and English people. To be honest, for the German, I always notice that German are quiet in doing all the things.
Okay.
Very
so they're respectful.
In my opinion, yeah.
So Germans are more respectful abroad than English.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I
so
honestly
they're quiet to do that thing. I mean,
yeah, honestly, I think that the German people abroad are more respectful. Also because the topics of the places that German people wants to visit more and spend a lot of time in are more close to what we tend to.
1 second, Carol.
Okay.
You're turning that camera back.
Okay. So yeah, a lot of what I was saying. Yeah, the topic, the interest in tourism of German people are, in my opinion, different from the English one.
Right.
When they don't tend to go to the beaches most of the time. We don't see them on the beaches, and when they are there, are quiet. They are not oriented to the party, which is a different interest, but it's understandable. Yeah, and also probably never suffered about it, and I think that. The one thing that most of people will notice is the loudness of English people. But as I said, abroad. But as I said,
and that's quite disrespectful sometimes.
I don't feel like it is disrespectful. French people tend to feel.
I guess would older people not feel it? Like if you're a 50, 60, 70-year-old,
actually
walking down the beach and then you got some loud group of English people.
Oh, okay.
So as a young person, it might not be as bad for you. But I guess,
that is it's known that in most of the Europe, continental one, at a certain point you have to be more quiet. While in England, the party can continue until the end of the night.
I feel like we started off with English being like identical to every other country. The English people.
This is different. But honestly, this is mostly what I appreciate, so I don't tend to see the difference.
I mean, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe.
You say that the systems are good here, and I guess your experience of working with English people in your job has been very good, very professional.
Absolutely.
And you haven't had any issues with, I guess, a lack of motivation, a lack of wanting to do their job, a lack of entitlement. For you, you've never really seen much of that. Is that right to say?
That's exactly right. but also just because my kind of job is something I always wanted to do, so I was looking properly for this.
You're,
which is
yeah, so
perfect,
you're in a professional job. Is it programming that you're
exactly,
doing?
I'm being programmer. Yeah.
So I think it's worth put. So my experiences of of English culture, what people do, are quite different. In the professional workspace, I would probably agree largely with you. I guess there's just a different type of people when you're in that office or 9 to 5 type environment where people were reasonably well paid or quite well paid, especially by potentially a lot of other European countries. I think we're less well paid than the USA, as far as I understand.
Oh, well, all Europe is like this, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Probably you have to go to Swiss to
Yeah.
find something similar, but I don't know.
If you speak, I think there's one difference there. Like, even though it is quite well paid in the UK, even in the professional jobs, a lot of people still feel as if they're underpaid. I know a lot of people who feel like they do not have enough money in their professional work jobs. They're way above the average earnings, let's say above £30,000 a year, and they still feel as if they do not have enough money to live their life properly in England.
Well, as much as I think it's because basically there is dynamicity in job and there is a way to gain more from it. So the problem is that there aren't enough means by the government of England to block the speculation on it, because those players are able to give you more money, they raise up the prices, and this creates a problem of gentrification in which people that have some money can stay in those places, and people without those kind of money try to go all around other areas. But then people who stay in those places who can once afford those things can't anymore, because the prices just got up. The prices of unproductive things just went up. So if there is not, from my perspective, from a Southern European perspective, if you don't create some means to block this thing, to avoid the speculation that they're gonna rise up.
Basically saying they're not being spoiled by the people in the local economy aren't spoiled because they're just being forced by other people to change.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess my view would be, I do think there should be more done by the government to help local people stay in that area. As a policy, just coming up with it on the spot would be, okay, well now Manchester can demand a higher income. There should be more money flowing into the Manchester economy. You would take some of that money and now basically just redistribute that into education and training of people local, i.e. schools or colleges, or potentially even universities of Manchester, and give benefits there so that local people can get more access to training and education than perhaps other people across the UK don't have that. And then from that you would reduce the amount of local people not being able to afford to stay in the area, because you would hope that would then translate into jobs. I understand that's probably going to take a long time to do. That's part of the issue.
If you don't do a qualified job, you may not be able to chase your dreams, which is something that maybe other countries don't.
So that, just elaborate on that last point. So if you don't have a professional job, you won't be able to chase your dream. Do you think so? But that should be the case in the UK as well, right?
That is maybe a different, because in my opinion here it's still possible to do a non-qualified job with certain hours thanks to working system. So it can be also possible not to choose a university.
I think a lot of people in England would say, low-paid jobs or the benefit system does not give you nowhere near enough money to even live. I think I've heard the word poverty being chucked around. Sort of, if you're in a low-paid job, then you're basically in poverty. I disagree with that, but that does conflict with what you say in terms of because let's say somebody on £20,000 a year, there's a lot of complaints to say that I can barely live my life like that. In my opinion, they're not being frugal enough with their money. But I think if you earn £20,000 a year, maybe you can't live in a city centre, or maybe you can't afford to drive a car. I don't have a car myself, so there's loads of sacrifices you can potentially make. And in my mind, a lot of English people want everything. The whole Instagram culture where You know, you're always getting a coffee every day. You're eating out a lot. You're going to the gym a lot. You go on holiday a lot, and this entire maybe it's like people in England just expect to be able to consume more with less money.
Yeah, an unsustainable way of
Yeah.
perceive happiness.
Yeah. Okay, that was a good area to dive into. Do you think people in England spend more money?
Oh yeah, I
Right.
think they do. I think that their way of doing economy, or the way of accounting, how can I say, the way of living is always been a way to be to use more money, to use more assets.
One thing about this whole sort of spending more money and such is what I've noticed is I do think it's probably a very recent thing. Like in my parents' generation, my mum and my dad effectively earned somewhere close to sort of minimum wage, around let's say the £20,000 mark a year, maybe a bit less, and they've been able to afford to basically pay mortgages on properties, but they do not. They do not go out and eat in restaurants. They don't go on holidays every year, maybe every 2 or 3 years. They're basically a lot more frugal with their money. Whereas obviously the new generation, from what I can see, and this includes myself, like I spend way too much money than I should really. I would like to save more money, but it's just very difficult not to go out and have a few drinks or have coffee or eat out or live the luxuries that I kind of expect. Last point I just want to make about jobs is I guess it's around how many people are not willing to do lower level jobs. Now you might not have any experience of this because you're just in a professional job, but I guess I've seen there's a big culture where people aren't willing to take jobs at the lower end. So very specifically, I guess like farming and cleaning jobs, you'll never really see an English person doing that job. It's always sort of passed
someone
down
coming
to-
from outside.
Yeah, exactly.
It's looking for
And for me, that is an element of being a bit spoiled, because the fact that you're not willing to do a job that somebody else is willing to do, for me, that's
Well,
yeah.
in my opinion, I don't agree with this. Just because this is a rhetorical thing that is also a lot told even in my country, and I think it's told in a lot of countries,
Yeah.
that there are some jobs. The problem of a country is that people in a higher place doesn't want to do any more low level job, because so this is the start of decadence. Well, it can be like this. But most of the time it's because the lower level job has a lower ability of guaranteed rights, of guaranteed pay for hours, and at the end we are this is an optimistic view. We are in a certain moment of the human development that we understood that we don't have to do some jobs because we are obliged to. It's needed to you. It's needed to someone that wants you to do this job. So at the end, you don't do it, and you know that not doing or not doing it will not change your life. But this is different for someone coming from outside.
So instead of saying spoiled, which in my mind I'm just kind of thinking, but you're saying, which is quite interesting, is it's not that they're spoiled. It's literally that they just want the very basic human rights in terms of a guaranteed of a job, guaranteed income.
I never had
That
this
should be-
experience here.
That
so I
should
don't
be
know.
something that everybody wants. So just because, and the people in England want that, but however, when people abroad are coming across to do jobs that aren't guaranteed, potentially like a cleaner or these 0-hour contracts, they're willing to take on those jobs just because potentially they've got less opportunity or choice.
Exactly.
Than the local English people are.
Exactly, but basically, I don't want to say this generalizing, and I don't have that experience on it, but it can be like when someone from here knows that he's working for changing his life, for perceiving some objectives, and maybe some low-level jobs doesn't give them these things, while other people are escaping for poverty, and they just want to change even for a slightly way their life and doing this kind of jobs. So in my opinion, it's not a problem of less, even if there is the rhetorical thing that a lot of people in England doesn't want to do larger job because they're lazy, while other people are a lot stronger. It's something that yeah, even in the Roman Empire, they accused the German people to be less lazy than the Roma that doesn't want to do.
Okay.
Even at the Egyptian,
Okay.
and maybe it's not like this. It's just a changing of the system that doesn't follow the changing of the culture. But
It's interesting. I think there is definitely a case there to say everybody should potentially raise the minimum expectations. And
Yeah.
just because England's done that and maybe some other countries in Europe hasn't, doesn't mean that English people are necessarily spoiled. What do you think about the fact that English people only ever speak one language?
Oh well, I mean, as much as my thought is that if you don't have the incentive to learn another language, just to do one thing, if you have the push of a need to learn a new thing, you don't. I can tell a lot of countries that even if they are taught two languages and they don't speak English, they don't want to speak English.
Right.
And
'Cause I think I feel like whenever I go to Europe, everybody knows like multiple languages.
you are very generous with this thing, but yeah, there are some countries of Europe that are normally bilingual.
Yeah.
They always I mean, in my opinion, it's always for the needs. And I think that most of the people in England doesn't feel like it's a need to know another language.
I think almost everybody in England feels that way. Like just looking at the education system when you're in school, the children figure how the teachers are kind of teaching you, and you know, I remember the only reason I needed to learn German at school, I thought was, oh, if I want to become a German translator, then I can do German at school. And that was it. It was literally there was nothing. For me, it was not about, you know, embracing other people around the world. It wasn't about, you know, when you learn a new language, you can learn effectively quite a lot of the culture. There's
Exactly.
a lot of different words, right? In another language, there's a lot of words that don't directly translate and have realistically a different meaning.
Exactly.
So-
Yeah, language is a description of the thoughts, so definitely. So it is not it's not a mystery why English is the most common language in the world.
Yeah.
The only thing that I think it may affect is that, in my experience, learning more than a language give you an abstract idea of what the language is or what the communication is. So if I learn another language, even I am optimistic, but if I learn another language, I may find what is the minimum part that I have to invent in order to communicate
How
a
many-
concept, to create a thought. While if you don't, you only think that one thing is close to the same sound, the same concept, and you don't investigate to the reason of some words or to the reason of some thought.
I mean, I think there were some studies to show that, you know, people who learn multiple languages are basically inherently more intelligent.
They are
Because you're having to think about a lot of different dynamics and such. And I
Definitely.
can completely understand that. So, how many different languages can you speak?
Well, I can speak English, Italian, and French.
Okay,
French.
Yeah, three languages. So that's a good example. And I can only speak one language. And so,
Well,
in
but
your view, then the fact that English people can only speak one language, it doesn't really make them spoiled because it's all about incentive, and there's not much incentive. Is that in general what you're thinking?
absolutely. The problem is that, yeah, honestly, I don't think it will be a big problem in terms of spoiled.
I feel like you're sort of in the same position before we started talking. I think I feel as if we're a little bit more compassionate towards the English culture and the job situation before since speaking to you about that. So thanks for bringing that up. I think that wraps it up. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And you can follow me on Instagram at RichRJW. Is there any sort of closing remarks from yourself?
That's great.
Sure.
See you. Cool.
Cheers, guys. Yeah.